The fragile connection between Earth and Krylos grew stronger with each passing day. Laura and Alex worked tirelessly, sending messages that combined logic, creativity, and emotion. They knew the stakes were high, but they also felt a growing sense of purpose. For the first time, it seemed like humanity had a real chance to change Krylos' mind. Krylos, too, was changing, slowly and reluctantly. Deep within his fortress-like chambers, he replayed the humans' transmissions, studying their patterns and meanings. There was something about their persistence that unsettled him. These creatures weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to connect. It reminded him of his own past. The loss of his family. The destruction of his home planet by unchecked technology. He had vowed never to let such tragedy happen again. Yet here he was, threatening another species for reasons he no longer fully understood. One evening, as Krylos stood alone on the observation deck of his ship, he allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. The view of Earth below was breathtaking, a vibrant blue and green sphere teeming with life. It was beautiful, fragile, and full of potential. Could he really destroy it, or was there another way? His thoughts were interrupted by Lieutenant Varnock, who approached cautiously. "Commander," Varnock said, his voice low and respectful, "the crew is questioning your decisions. Some believe we should act decisively, while others think we've already waited too long." Krylos turned to face him, his glowing eyes piercing through the dim light. "Decisiveness without understanding leads to ruin," he replied. "I will not repeat the mistakes of the past." Varnock hesitated before speaking again. "But what if waiting only gives them time to prepare an attack?" "They have shown no aggression," Krylos countered. "Only ingenuity and restraint. Tell me, Varnock, what would you do in my place?" The question caught Varnock off guard. After a moment, he answered honestly, "I would seek to understand them better. If they truly are different, then perhaps coexistence is possible." Krylos nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already knew. "Then that is what we will do." Meanwhile, back on Earth, Laura and Alex received a message from Krylos, a clear and direct invitation to meet once more aboard his ship. This time, however, the tone was different. It wasn't a demand or a test. It was an offer to talk openly. Laura's hands trembled as she read the transmission. "He wants to negotiate," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. Alex smiled, relief washing over him. "We did it. All those signals, all those risks, they paid off." When they arrived aboard Krylos' ship, they found him waiting in the same grand chamber as before. But this time, his posture was less imposing, his expression softer. As they approached, he spoke. "You have proven yourselves worthy of consideration," he said. "Your actions show you value knowledge over destruction. Perhaps we can find a way forward together." Laura stepped forward, her heart pounding. "We don't want war, Krylos. We want understanding. We're willing to share what we know, and learn from you too." Krylos studied her carefully, then nodded. "Very well. Let us begin." Over the following weeks, humanity and Krylos forged a fragile alliance. Scientists exchanged knowledge, sharing advancements in medicine, energy, and technology. Military forces stood down, though vigilance remained. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As Alex and Laura returned home, they reflected on everything that had happened. Humanity's survival hadn't come from strength or weapons. It had come from trust, creativity, and courage. And while challenges lay ahead, they knew one thing for certain. The future was brighter because of what they had built together. Tensions on Earth were still high, but the ongoing exchanges with Krylos gave people a fragile sense of hope. Laura and Alex continued their efforts to strengthen the connection, knowing that every signal sent, and every response received, was a step toward either peace or disaster. The world watched anxiously, unsure what would happen next. One day, without warning, Krylos launched a small-scale attack. It wasn't massive or devastating, but it was enough to send a message. Several military satellites were disabled, and power grids in a few cities flickered briefly before stabilizing. Governments scrambled to respond, with some leaders calling for immediate retaliation. "This is proof he can't be trusted," one general shouted during an emergency meeting. "We need to strike back now." But Laura and Alex urged caution. "It's not an all-out assault," Alex argued. "He's testing us, seeing how we'll react. If we retaliate, we risk escalating things." Laura nodded. "We need to show restraint. Fighting back will only confirm his worst fears about us." Their advice was met with skepticism, but after much debate, global leaders agreed to hold off on military action. For now. Instead, they turned to Alex and Laura, asking them to craft a response using the pulse neutralizer. This time, the message had to convey strength without aggression, proving humanity could defend itself without resorting to violence. Alex worked tirelessly, tweaking the device to emit a dazzling burst of energy. When activated, it created a shimmering shield around key locations, visible even from space. The display was breathtaking, a swirling vortex of light that pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Embedded within the energy field was a simple message: "We are strong, but we choose peace." As the shield lit up the night sky, Krylos observed silently from his ship. His glowing eyes narrowed as he studied the display. For a moment, there was no reaction. Then, unexpectedly, the alien warlord spoke, not through signals, but directly to Earth's leaders via a global broadcast. "You have shown resilience," Krylos said, his deep voice echoing across the planet. "But resilience alone does not guarantee survival. Prove your intentions match your actions, or face the consequences." The ultimatum sent shockwaves through humanity. Some interpreted it as a final warning, while others saw it as an opportunity to deepen dialogue. Laura seized the moment, drafting a plea for understanding. She appealed not just to Krylos' logic, but to his emotions. Drawing on the shared messages of art and science, she reminded him of their mutual curiosity and the potential for cooperation. Her words were heartfelt and sincere, emphasizing humanity's desire to coexist rather than conquer. When the message was transmitted, everyone braced for the worst. But instead of hostility, Krylos responded with silence. Days passed with no further attacks or communications. The uncertainty was maddening. But Laura and Alex refused to give up. They continued refining their tools and crafting new messages, determined to keep the lines of communication open. Finally, late one evening, a faint pulse came through. At first, it seemed like static, a random burst of energy. But when Laura analyzed it, she realized it carried meaning. It was subtle, almost hesitant, but unmistakably deliberate. Krylos was reaching out again. "He's responding," Laura said, her voice trembling with excitement. "Look at this pattern. It matches one of our earlier sequences." Alex leaned over her shoulder, studying the data. "You're right. And look here, he's added something new, a variation we haven't seen before." Together, they decoded the message. It wasn't complex, but it carried significance. Acknowledgement. Krylos was signaling that he understood their intentions, and perhaps, just perhaps, he was beginning to trust them. News of the breakthrough spread quickly, reigniting hope among those who had begun to lose faith. People gathered outside, staring up at the stars, imagining the alien warlord watching from above. Was he friend or foe? No one knew for sure. But for the first time since his arrival, humanity dared to believe that peace might be possible. Krylos, meanwhile, stood alone on his command deck, gazing down at Earth. The humans' persistence intrigued him. Their creativity inspired him. And their courage, it unsettled him. Perhaps they truly were different, or perhaps they were simply clever. Either way, Krylos decided to wait. Let them prove themselves. For now, he would hold off on further attacks. Whatever came next, he would be ready. The uneasy truce between Earth and Krylos forces continued, but neither side was fully at ease. Every interaction felt like walking on thin ice, with one wrong move threatening to shatter the fragile peace. Laura and Alex worked around the clock, determined to build on the progress they had made. They knew that maintaining communication was key to keeping Krylos engaged and preventing him from reverting to hostility. Alex spent most of his time in the lab, refining the pulse neutralizer. He had already proven its ability to send messages, but now he wanted it to do more. Inspired by Laura's insights into Krylos language, Alex began experimenting with embedding complex patterns into the energy pulses. These patterns weren't just random. They were carefully designed to mimic the rhythmic structures found in Krylos' own speech. The goal was simple: create a signal so intricate that it would demonstrate humanity's intelligence and creativity. Meanwhile, Laura collaborated with Dr. Ethan Moore to analyze the growing body of data exchanged with Krylos. Each new pulse or sequence brought fresh clues about the alien warlord's mindset. What they discovered surprised them. Beneath the layers of aggression and caution, there were hints of something else. Regret, perhaps, or even fear. Krylos seemed to view humanity not as a current threat, but as a potential future danger. His actions, though harsh, appeared motivated by a desire to prevent history from repeating itself. One evening, as Laura pored over her notes, she had an idea. What if we show him we're willing to share knowledge? She suggested to Alex. Not just weapons or technology, but ideas, things that could benefit both sides. Alex raised an eyebrow. You mean like trade secrets? Sort of, Laura replied. But bigger than that. Imagine sending him something truly valuable, like medical advancements or renewable energy solutions, things that don't involve destruction. Alex nodded thoughtfully. It was risky, but it might work. Together, they drafted a proposal for global leaders, outlining their plan. At first, many resisted the idea. Why should we give anything to someone who invaded us? One official argued. Because it's not about giving, Laura countered. It's about showing trust. If we want Krylos to see us as partners instead of enemies, we need to take the first step. After hours of debate, the proposal was approved. A team of scientists compiled a selection of humanity's greatest achievements, from breakthroughs in medicine to sustainable farming techniques, and encoded them into a series of signals using the pulse neutralizer. When the transmission was sent, everyone held their breath. To their relief, Krylos responded almost immediately. His reply wasn't hostile, it was curious. For the first time, he initiated contact without being prompted, sending a detailed query about one of the shared technologies. It was a small victory, but it meant something important. Krylos was interested. Encouraged by this development, Laura and Alex pushed further. They began working on a new kind of message, one that combined science with art. Using mathematical sequences and rhythmic tones, they created a symphony of light and sound designed to convey emotion rather than information. It was risky. Emotions were harder to interpret across species, but Laura believed it was worth trying. If we can make him feel something, not just think, maybe he'll understand us better, she explained. When the message was transmitted, Krylos didn't respond right away. Hours passed, then days. Just when hope began to fade, a burst of energy shot back toward Earth. This time, it wasn't a single pulse. It was a cascade of colors and patterns, shifting and blending like a living painting. It was beautiful, mesmerizing, and utterly alien. Laura stared at the display in awe. He's responding in kind, she whispered. This isn't just acknowledgement, it's participation. Alex grinned, unable to hide his excitement. Looks like we've got his attention again. For the first time since Krylos' arrival, there was a glimmer of genuine connection. Humanity's ingenuity and creativity had sparked something unexpected. A dialogue built not on fear or force, but on shared curiosity. Unbeknownst to them, Krylos watched the exchange unfold from his command deck. The human's latest message stirred something deep within him, a memory of a time before conquest, when discovery was its own reward. Perhaps these creatures truly were different, or perhaps they were simply clever. Either way, Krylos decided to keep watching, for now. Back on Earth, news of Laura and Alex's meeting with Krylos spread quickly. People were divided. Some saw it as a sign of hope, a chance to avoid war and find common ground with the alien warlord. Others viewed it as reckless, arguing that trusting Krylos was too risky. Military leaders, in particular, were furious. "We handed over 2 of our people without any guarantees," one general snapped during an emergency meeting. "What happens if he changes his mind and attacks anyway?" Laura and Alex tried to explain their experience aboard Krylos' ship, but their words fell on deaf ears for many. Fear had taken hold, and fear made people act rashly. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, holding signs that read "No surrender" and "Stand your ground." Meanwhile, conspiracy theories about Krylos' true intentions flooded social media, further fueling panic. Amid the chaos, cracks began forming within Krylos' own ranks. Lieutenant Varnock, one of his most trusted advisors, had grown uneasy about the direction things were heading. He stood silently in the shadows of the command deck as Krylos reviewed data from the recent exchange with Earth. The humans had shown intelligence and creativity, qualities Varnock hadn't expected. But more importantly, they had demonstrated restraint. Why would a species capable of aggression choose diplomacy instead? "Why do you hesitate?" Varnock finally asked, stepping into the light. His voice was calm but firm, betraying none of the unease he felt. Krylos turned to face him, his glowing eyes narrowing slightly. "Hesitate? I do not hesitate. I assess." "But assessing leaves room for doubt," Varnock countered. "You've seen their actions. They've offered no violence, only words. Are we truly so different from them?" Krylos let out a low growl, though whether it was frustration or contemplation, Varnock couldn't tell. "Doubt is dangerous," Krylos said after a pause. "It weakens resolve. These humans, they remind me of us before the fall. Clever, ambitious, blind to the consequences of their creations." Varnock nodded slowly. "And yet, they reach out. They seek understanding rather than destruction. Is that not worth exploring?" Krylos didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned back to the console, replaying fragments of the signals sent by Laura and Alex. Their messages carried patterns tied to the ancient Martian civilization, a reminder of what happened when unchecked power consumed a species. Krylos clenched his fists, his armor creaking under the strain. Could these humans really be different, or was he simply delaying the inevitable? Elsewhere on the ship, whispers of rebellion began spreading among the crew. Many had followed Krylos out of loyalty, believing his mission to dominate weaker species was justified. But now, doubts crept in. Some wondered if conquest was still the right path. Others questioned whether Krylos' fears of humanity's potential were grounded in reality or paranoia. Back on Earth, Laura and Alex faced their own challenges. While some praised their bravery, others accused them of naivety. What if Krylos is just buying time? A senator demanded during a televised hearing. What if this is all a trick to lower our defenses? Alex bristled at the accusation but kept his tone measured. If Krylos wanted to destroy us, he could have done it already. He's given us a chance to prove ourselves. Shouldn't we take it? Laura added, "We're not saying we should trust him blindly, but communication is better than conflict. If we can show him that we value cooperation over domination, maybe we can change his mind." Despite their efforts, skepticism lingered. Governments around the world debated how to proceed. Some pushed for immediate military action, while others advocated for continued dialogue. In the end, a fragile compromise was reached. Humanity would maintain its defenses but focus on strengthening ties with Krylos through peaceful means. As days passed, tensions remained high, but small signs of progress emerged. Krylos allowed limited trade of resources between his ship and Earth, testing the waters of cooperation. Scientists like Laura worked tirelessly to decode more of his language, hoping to deepen mutual understanding, and Alex refined the pulse neutralizer, ensuring it could serve as both a tool for defense and communication. For now, the fragile alliance held, but everyone knew the situation could shift at any moment. Trust was a fragile thing, on both sides. The corridor aboard Krylos' ship was unlike anything Laura and Alex had ever seen. The walls shimmered with a faint, pulsating glow, as if alive, and the air carried a strange metallic tang. Every step echoed loudly, amplifying the tension in their chests. Ahead of them, Krylos stood motionless, his towering figure casting a long shadow. His glowing eyes seemed to pierce through them, studying every detail of their expressions and movements. As they approached, one of the guards stepped forward, scanning them with a handheld device. Laura flinched but forced herself to stay calm. She reminded herself that they were unarmed and had come in peace. Any sign of fear or aggression could ruin everything. When the scan finished, the guard nodded silently, stepping back to his position beside Krylos. Krylos gestured for them to follow him deeper into the ship. Without a word, he turned and led the way, his heavy footsteps reverberating through the corridor. Laura and Alex exchanged a quick glance before following, their hearts pounding. The ship's interior was vast and labyrinthine, filled with strange machinery and alien symbols etched into the walls. It felt like stepping into another world entirely. They finally entered a large chamber, its ceiling high above them, and adorned with intricate patterns that shifted and changed like liquid metal. In the center of the room was a raised platform, where Krylos stopped and turned to face them. His presence was overwhelming, his armor gleaming under the dim light. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence stretched on, heavy and suffocating. "You have shown bravery," Krylos said at last, his voice deep and resonant. "But bravery alone is not enough. Tell me, why should I spare your species?" Laura swallowed hard, her throat dry. This was it, the moment she had prepared for. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward slightly, meeting Krylos' gaze as best she could. "We understand your concerns," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "You've seen civilizations destroyed by their own creations. You fear we might follow the same path. But we're different. We've learned from the past. We want to build, not destroy." Krylos tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Different," he repeated, almost as if testing the word. "Yet you possess weapons capable of great destruction. Your kind has already waged wars against itself. How can I trust you will not turn those weapons on others?" Alex stepped forward this time, speaking up. "Not all weapons are meant to destroy," he said. "Some are tools for protection, for communication, even for understanding. That's what we've been trying to show you. Our goal isn't conquest, it's connection." Krylos narrowed his glowing eyes, considering their words. For a moment, Laura thought she saw something flicker in his expression, a hint of doubt, or perhaps curiosity. But just as quickly, it vanished, replaced by his usual stern demeanor. "Connection," Krylos said slowly. "A noble concept, yet history proves connections are fragile. Trust is fleeting." Laura nodded. "We know it won't be easy. But avoiding conflict starts with talking, not fighting. If you give us a chance, we can prove ourselves. We don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. We want to learn from them." For several long seconds, Krylos didn't respond. He simply stared at them, his piercing gaze weighing their sincerity. Finally, he let out a low rumble that might have been a sigh. "Very well," he said. "I will grant you this chance. But know this, if you betray my trust, there will be no second opportunity." Relief washed over Laura and Alex, though they remained cautious. They knew they weren't safe yet, not completely, but this was progress. Krylos gestured toward the exit, signaling the end of their audience. As they turned to leave, Laura couldn't help but glance back at him one last time. There was something beneath his hardened exterior, something she hadn't expected. Uncertainty. Back on the shuttle, as they descended toward Earth, Alex leaned back in his seat, exhaling deeply. "That went better than I thought it would," he admitted. Better, but not perfect, Laura replied. He's still skeptical. We need to keep proving ourselves, to him and to everyone else. As the shuttle touched down, both of them knew the real challenge was only beginning. Convincing Krylos was just the first step. Now, they had to convince humanity too. The back-and-forth exchange of signals between Earth and Krylos' ship continued for days, each message growing more complex than the last. Laura and Alex worked tirelessly, decoding patterns and crafting responses. It was like a delicate dance. One wrong step could shatter the fragile connection they were building. They knew they were walking a thin line. Krylos might see their efforts as cleverness or as defiance. Either way, they couldn't afford to stop now. One evening, after sending their latest signal, Laura stared at the monitor, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but her mind buzzing with possibilities. "Do you think he trusts us yet?" she asked Alex, who was adjusting the pulse neutralizer nearby. Alex paused, his hands resting on the device. "Trust. I don't know if aliens like him even understand trust the way we do, but he's definitely interested. If he wasn't, he would have attacked by now." Laura nodded, though she wasn't entirely convinced. Interest didn't mean safety. Still, she clung to the hope that their communication was making a difference. She glanced at the clock. It was late, but sleep felt impossible. There was too much at stake. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Instead of another pulse from Krylos' ship, a holographic projection appeared in the sky above the lab. It was faint at first, shimmering like heat waves on a summer day. But soon it solidified into the image of Krylos himself. Towering and imposing, his armored form radiated authority. His glowing eyes scanned the area below, and though his expression was unreadable, there was an undeniable intensity to his presence. Laura froze, her heart pounding. Alex stepped closer to her, his hand instinctively reaching for the pulse neutralizer strapped to his belt. "What does he want?" Alex whispered, his voice low but steady. Before they could react further, Krylos spoke. His deep, resonant voice echoed across the facility, not through speakers, but seemingly directly into their minds. "You have shown initiative," he said, his words deliberate and measured. "But words are fleeting. Actions define intent. Prove yourselves worthy of my attention." The message sent chills down Laura's spine. Was this a challenge, a threat, or simply another test? She glanced at Alex, who looked just as unsure. "What does he mean by worthy?" Alex muttered under his breath. Laura thought quickly. "He wants proof that we're not just clever. We're capable of thinking ahead, of understanding consequences." Her mind raced back to the ancient Martian civilization Ethan had told her about. Krylos clearly valued lessons from the past. Maybe that was the key. Summoning her courage, Laura stepped forward, addressing the hologram as if Krylos could hear her directly. "We understand your concerns," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "We've studied civilizations that fell because of their own creations. We don't want to repeat those mistakes. Let us show you that we're different." For a moment, there was silence. Then Krylos tilted his head slightly, as if considering her words. "Different," he repeated, his tone neither approving nor dismissive. "Prove it. Come aboard my vessel. Unarmed. Alone." The demand hung in the air like a storm cloud. Everyone in the lab exchanged uneasy glances. Going aboard Krylos' ship was unthinkable. Suicidal, even. Yet, refusing would likely end any chance of peaceful resolution. Laura turned to Alex. "We have to go," she said firmly. "If we don't, all of this will have been for nothing." Alex hesitated. "It's too dangerous. What if it's a trap?" "It might be," Laura admitted. "But staying here won't change anything. We've come this far. Let's take the risk." After a tense discussion with military leaders, who reluctantly agreed, seeing no other option, Laura and Alex prepared for the journey. Dressed in plain clothes with no weapons or gadgets, they boarded a small shuttle sent by Krylos. As the craft descended toward the massive alien ship, Both of them felt a mix of fear and determination. They didn't know what awaited them inside, but they were ready to face it. When the shuttle docked, the doors hissed open, revealing a corridor bathed in dim green light. Standing at the end was Krylos himself, flanked by two towering guards. He gestured for them to approach. As they stepped forward, Laura reminded herself why they were there. This wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that humanity deserved a future. The days that followed the exchange between Earth and Krylos' ship were tense but filled with cautious optimism. Laura and Alex spent every waking moment analyzing the pulse of light they had received from Krylos. It was a small victory, but it gave them hope. For the first time since the alien warlord's arrival, humanity had proof that communication might be possible. The repeating pattern of 3 tones wasn't complex, but it carried meaning, a response to their earlier signal. To Laura, it felt like the start of something bigger. Alex, however, remained practical. It's just one pulse, he reminded her as they pored over data in the lab. We don't know what it means yet. It could be a test, or even a trap. But even he couldn't deny the significance of the moment. If nothing else, Krylos had acknowledged their attempt to reach out. That alone was worth celebrating. While Laura worked on deciphering the pulse, Alex focused on refining the pulse neutralizer. He wanted to make sure it could handle more than just simple signals. What if Krylos sent something more complicated next time? Or worse, what if he decided to attack again? Alex knew they needed a backup plan. He added new layers to the device, allowing it to adapt to different types of energy signatures. It was a risky adjustment. Too many variables could cause the system to malfunction. But Alex didn't have time to second-guess himself. Every hour counted. Meanwhile, news of the exchange spread across the globe. People watched live broadcasts of scientists discussing the pulse, debating its meaning and significance. Some saw it as a sign of hope, while others dismissed it as irrelevant. Military leaders grew impatient, urging governments to prepare for the worst. We can't rely on signals and guesses, one general argued during a meeting. If we don't strike now, we'll lose our chance. Laura disagreed. She believed that rushing into conflict would only make things worse. Instead, she proposed another message, one designed to show Krylos that humanity valued cooperation over destruction. Drawing inspiration from Ethan's research on the ancient Martian civilization, she included symbols and patterns tied to the extinct species. Her idea was simple: remind Krylos of his own history, subtly suggesting that humanity understood his fears and shared his concerns about the dangers of unchecked power. Alex supported the plan but insisted on testing it thoroughly before sending anything. Together, they ran simulations, ensuring the message wouldn't trigger any defensive systems aboard Krylos' ship. Once they were confident, they transmitted the signal using the pulse neutralizer. This time, the message was longer and more intricate, combining mathematical sequences with rhythmic tones and fragments of the Martian language. It was a gamble, but Laura and Alex hoped it would resonate with Krylos. Hours passed without a response. The wait was agonizing. Laura paced back and forth in the lab, glancing at the monitors every few minutes. Alex tried to stay focused on his work, but even he found it hard to concentrate. Had they pushed too far? Was Krylos ignoring them now? Just when doubt began to creep in, the monitors lit up. Another pulse came through, not just a single tone this time, but a series of pulses forming a pattern. Laura gasped as she recognized the structure. It matched part of the message they had sent. Krylos wasn't just responding, he was engaging. He had taken their signal and altered it slightly, creating a new sequence. It was subtle, almost like a question. Laura's hands trembled as she wrote down the pattern, trying to decode its meaning. Could this be the start of a real conversation? Alex felt a surge of pride. Their efforts were paying off. "He's testing us," Alex said, his voice steady despite the excitement bubbling inside him. "He wants to see if we can keep up." For the rest of the day, Laura and Alex worked tirelessly to craft a reply. They kept their message concise but meaningful, hoping to build trust without overwhelming Krylos. As they prepared to send it, they couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. No matter what happened next, they had achieved something remarkable. Humanity wasn't just reacting, it was reaching out. Krylos, observing the humans' persistence, felt a flicker of curiosity. These creatures were proving to be more resourceful than he had anticipated. Perhaps there was more to them than met the eye. For now, he decided to let the game continue. Whatever came next, he would be ready. Laura and Ethan spent hours poring over the ancient Martian tablet, comparing its symbols to the patterns in Krylos' message. The more they studied, the clearer it became that there was a connection. The rhythm and structure of Krylos' speech mirrored the language used by the long-extinct civilization. It wasn't just coincidence. This was deliberate. Laura felt a spark of hope. If Krylos was using a language tied to a civilization destroyed by its own weapons, perhaps his invasion wasn't purely about conquest. Maybe he feared humanity would follow the same destructive path. Ethan agreed but warned her not to get too optimistic. Even if Krylos knows this story, he said, it doesn't mean he'll hesitate to destroy us. Fear can make people, and aliens, do terrible things. Still, the discovery gave them a new perspective. Instead of seeing Krylos as an unstoppable force of evil, they began to view him as someone driven by caution, maybe even regret. This insight could be key to finding a way to talk to him. While Laura worked on crafting a response to Krylos' ultimatum, Alex focused on refining the pulse neutralizer. He had added a new feature to the device, the ability to embed simple messages into its energy pulses, using basic mathematical sequences, patterns that transcended language. He hoped to create a signal Krylos would recognize as intelligent communication. It was a risky move. If Krylos interpreted the pulses as a threat, it could provoke an attack. But Alex believed it was worth the risk. Humanity needed to show it had something to offer beyond brute force. One evening, Laura visited Alex in the lab. She brought her notes and a recording of Krylos' message, hoping to combine their efforts. "What if we use your device to send a message?" she suggested. Something subtle, like a question or a gesture of peace. Alex nodded thoughtfully. He liked the idea but knew it wouldn't be easy. They would have to time the transmission perfectly to avoid triggering Krylos' defenses. As they worked together, news broke that Krylos had launched a small probe toward Earth's surface. Military forces scrambled to intercept it, but the probe moved too quickly. When it landed in a remote desert, scientists were sent to investigate. What they found shocked them. The probe wasn't armed. Instead, it carried another message from Krylos. This time, the tone was different. "You are resourceful," the message read, "but resources alone cannot save you. Prove your worth or perish." The cryptic words sparked debate among world leaders. Some saw it as a challenge, while others viewed it as an opportunity. Laura, however, saw it as a sign. Krylos wasn't just testing humanity's strength, he was testing its intelligence. She shared her theory with Alex, who immediately began tweaking the pulse neutralizer to include a more complex sequence. Together, they crafted a message combining mathematical patterns with rhythmic pulses inspired by Krylos' own language. When the modified weapon was ready, Alex and Laura took it to a secure facility where they could test it safely. With the help of a satellite array, they aimed the device at Krylos' ship and activated it. A burst of energy shot into space, carrying their encoded message. For a few tense moments, nothing happened. Then, unexpectedly, the ship responded. A single pulse of light returned, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't hostile. It was acknowledgement. Laura's heart raced as she realized what had just occurred. Krylos had received their message and replied. It wasn't a declaration of peace, but it was a start. Alex let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "We've got his attention," he said quietly. "Now we need to keep it." Back at the lab, they analyzed the returning pulse, searching for clues about its meaning. It was simple, a repeating pattern of 3 tones, but it matched one of the sequences they had sent. To Laura, it felt like a glimmer of understanding, a tiny bridge between two vastly different species. She couldn't help but wonder if Krylos felt the same way. As word of the exchange spread, opinions were divided. Some hailed it as a breakthrough, proof that communication was possible. Others dismissed it as meaningless, arguing that Krylos was merely toying with them. Despite the skepticism, Laura and Alex pressed on. They knew they were onto something important, even if no one else understood yet. Krylos, meanwhile, observed the humans' actions closely. Their attempt to communicate intrigued him. He had encountered countless species before, but none had shown such creativity under pressure. Perhaps these humans truly were different, or perhaps they were simply desperate. Either way, Krylos decided to wait. For now, he would hold off on further attacks. Let them think, let them try again. Whatever came next, he was ready. The days following Krylos' message were filled with tension. Governments around the world debated their next move, but no clear plan emerged. Some leaders argued for immediate retaliation, while others urged caution, fearing that any aggressive action would lead to catastrophic consequences. In the meantime, people everywhere lived in a state of constant anxiety, unsure of what might happen next. Alex Carter spent most of his time in the underground lab, working tirelessly on the prototype weapon. It was a sleek device, small enough to fit in the palm of his hand, but powerful enough to disrupt energy fields. He called it the pulse neutralizer. The idea was simple. Instead of destroying alien technology outright, the weapon would short-circuit it temporarily, giving humans a chance to fight back or retreat. But Alex wasn't satisfied. Something about the design felt incomplete. He couldn't shake the feeling that raw power alone wouldn't be enough to stop someone like Krylos. Laura Bennett, on the other hand, focused on decoding the transmission from Krylos. She replayed the message over and over, searching for hidden meanings. At first, she thought the patterns she noticed were just her imagination. But the more she analyzed them, the clearer they became. Certain phrases repeated at regular intervals, almost like a rhythm. Others contained strange pauses, as if Krylos had intentionally left gaps in his speech. Laura began writing these observations down, piecing together what looked like a rudimentary structure, a language within a language. One evening, frustrated by her lack of progress, Laura decided to reach out to Dr. Ethan Moore, a xenobiologist who specialized in studying extraterrestrial life. Ethan had spent decades researching ancient artifacts believed to belong to long-lost alien civilizations. If anyone could help her make sense of Krylos' message, it was him. She sent him an email late at night, attaching her notes and a recording of the broadcast. To her surprise, he replied within minutes, agreeing to meet her the next morning. When they finally sat down together in Ethan's cluttered office, Laura explained her findings. Ethan listened intently, occasionally nodding or scribbling something in his notebook. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "You're onto something," he said after a moment. "These patterns you've identified, they remind me of something I've seen before." He pulled out a dusty book from one of his shelves and flipped through its pages until he found what he was looking for. On the page was a diagram of symbols etched into a stone tablet discovered centuries ago on Mars. The symbols matched some of the rhythms Laura had noted in Krylos' speech. Ethan went on to explain that the tablet belonged to a civilization wiped out thousands of years ago, victims of their own advanced technology. Their weapons had grown so powerful that they eventually turned on themselves, leading to their extinction. If Krylos is using similar language structures, Ethan said, it's possible he knows this story. Maybe he's trying to warn us, or maybe he's afraid we'll end up like them. Laura's mind raced with possibilities. Could Krylos' invasion be motivated by more than just greed or conquest? Was it possible that he saw humanity as a threat, not because of its current capabilities, but because of its potential? She shared her thoughts with Ethan, who encouraged her to keep digging deeper. Together, they began brainstorming ways to use this information to open a dialogue with Krylos. Meanwhile, Alex continued refining the pulse neutralizer. He knew the weapon needed to serve a dual purpose, not just defense, but also communication. Inspired by Laura's work, he started experimenting with encoding messages into the energy pulses emitted by the device. If they could send a signal strong enough to penetrate Krylos' ship, maybe they could show him that humanity wasn't just a primitive species waiting to be conquered. They were intelligent, resourceful, and willing to adapt. As the hours turned into days, Alex and Laura grew increasingly aware of how interconnected their efforts were. While Alex worked on creating tools to protect Earth, Laura focused on finding a way to talk to their enemy. Neither of them knew if their approaches would work, but both understood one thing clearly: humanity's survival depended on more than brute strength. It required understanding, and perhaps even trust. Unbeknownst to them, Krylos was watching. Sensors aboard his ship monitored every move made by Earth's scientists and military forces. When he intercepted fragments of Laura's decoded messages and detected the unique energy signatures of Alex's prototype, a flicker of curiosity crossed his face. For the first time since arriving, he wondered if these humans might be different from the countless others he had encountered before. The stars twinkled faintly in the night sky, their usual calm disrupted by a strange glow on the horizon. People around the world stopped what they were doing, stepping outside to see what was happening. A massive object, larger than any skyscraper, descended slowly into Earth's orbit. It wasn't just big, it was terrifying. The ship was shaped like a jagged mountain, its metallic surface shimmering with an eerie green light. As it moved closer, it cast a shadow over entire cities, plunging them into darkness. Governments scrambled to respond. Emergency meetings were held in secret bunkers, and military forces were placed on high alert. No one knew what this visitor wanted, but everyone agreed. It didn't look friendly. News outlets buzzed with speculation, showing images of the alien craft and interviews with panicked citizens. Some people prayed, others cried, and a few tried to act brave. But deep down, everyone felt the same thing: fear. Among the chaos stood Alex Carter, a quiet but brilliant engineer who worked for a top-secret government lab. He had spent years developing advanced weapon systems, though he never imagined they'd be used against something like this. Alex stared at his computer screen, analyzing data streaming in from satellites. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he tried to understand the ship's energy signatures. Whatever powered that thing was unlike anything humans had ever seen. At the same time, Laura Bennett sat in her small apartment, glued to her laptop. She was a linguist, someone who studied languages, and she had been assigned to decode any messages the aliens might send. Her job wasn't glamorous, but it was important. Right now, however, all she could do was wait. The silence from the ship was deafening. Not a single signal had been detected yet. Laura tapped her pen nervously against the desk, wondering if she'd even recognize an alien language if she saw one. Then it happened. A voice boomed through every radio and television channel worldwide. It wasn't human, but somehow, everyone understood it. The words were cold and commanding. "This is Krylos," the voice declared. "Your planet is now under my control. Surrender immediately or face destruction." The message repeated itself in multiple languages, leaving no room for doubt. Humanity had been given an ultimatum. Krylos. That was the name of the being behind the invasion, a warlord known across galaxies for his ruthlessness. Stories about him spread quickly online. Entire civilizations had fallen before him, reduced to nothing more than ash and memory. Now, it seemed, Earth was next. Alex clenched his fists as he listened to the broadcast. He hated feeling powerless, especially when so much depended on his work. In the lab, prototypes of new weapons lined the shelves. Devices capable of disabling enemy tech or creating shields strong enough to withstand heavy fire. But none of them had been tested against something like Krylos' ship. Could they really stand a chance? Laura, meanwhile, leaned closer to her screen, replaying the transmission. Something about it caught her attention. Hidden beneath the harsh tone of the message were subtle patterns, repeated phrases and rhythms that hinted at deeper meaning. Was this intentional, or was she reading too much into it? Either way, it gave her hope. If she could crack the code, maybe she could find a way to communicate with Krylos instead of fighting him. As the hours passed, the weight of the situation settled over humanity. Fear lingered in the air, but so did determination. People began preparing for whatever came next, some barricading themselves indoors, others volunteering to help however they could. Alex returned to the lab, determined to refine his designs. Laura stayed up late into the night, scribbling notes and testing theories. Neither of them realized it yet, but their paths were about to cross in ways neither could have predicted. And together, they would uncover truths that might change the fate of the entire planet.